Hi guys, this is Melissa with Practically Creative. We're going to start a new series today, and this is what we're going to use. I'm going to start working from the Quilt Builders card deck, and we are going to make at least some of the blocks out of here. When I was working on a project with some other content creators, we found that there were very few videos that told you how to make these various blocks. So I want to start making some videos and show people how to make these blocks so that if there's another charity project like the one we were working on, people can find those videos for later use. So again, here is the box. We're working out of box 1 of the Quilt Builder card deck. And I'm going to start with the very first block that was in my box. This is a 9-patch variation. That's a simple block. And I have the instructions down here in front of me. I am going to do this one using a 10-inch square that I have in my scrap box and some scrap fabric that I have. This is a cream colored cotton. So I'm going to bring you guys down here to my cutting mat. I'm going to cut out what it tells me to cut. And I think that I'm going to work on 10-inch blocks for this particular set because that was the size. Now, 10-inch block is 10-inch finished. In this set, every block should, if it's by itself, finish at 10.5 inches. But the blocks read the finished block size. They don't read with the seam allowances included. So let's get you guys down here so that you can see overhead what I'm doing, and we'll go from there. Here we are at the cutting table, which is actually right in front of where we were sitting before. Here's my card block. And again, there's what it's supposed to look like when it's finished. And I'm going to turn it over here. And for the size that I need, let's see, this is going to be my dark color. And from that dark color, I need 3. So what I'm going to do, and like I said, I'm using all scraps here, is I'm going to fold my fabric in half. And this is from a pre-cut. I'm not overly fond of pinked edges on pre-cuts. So I'm folding my fabric over, lining it up on the board. And then I'm going to cut off that little edge there. Hello, Martelli. What are you doing today? This mat needs to be replaced. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 my dark pieces, and I need 4 of them. And I'm going to need 1 more. So I'll cut it out of the other part of the material that's left. This is definitely going to be a scrap-friendly project. I'm not concerned at all that I'll have enough fabric to do this. I may or may not put these blocks together into a quilt when I'm all done. I like scrappy quilts, so I'm good either way. All right, so that's scrap. And these are the 4 dark blocks, or the 4 dark pieces for this. And then let me cut out my other part. And you can tell this fabric is just flat scrap. So I'm going to square up an edge here. And square up an edge here. Well, that didn't square up very well, did it? Let's do this again. Okay. I'm not giving measurements because your cards will give you measurements. And there are 5 different sizes listed. So you'll cut the measurements according to what your card says. And you don't have to add seam allowances to this. The cuts are set so that you get your seam allowance as you go. And then I'm double checking my measurements on my card before I cut anything. For me, that works the best. Look, set it up, look again. Make sure that it's the way you want it to be. And I don't think the cutting is the issue for most people. I think it's the construction on these. But I'm showing cutting because if you're an absolute beginner trying to work with this, it might be an issue. Okay, looks like we've got everything cut. The easiest way to construct these blocks is to put your block down the way it's supposed to be. I want to make sure my fabric is right side up when I put these down here. My fabric has a little bit of direction, not a whole lot. And this is what you have. Now this is called a 9-patch variation. And it goes together fairly simply. Let me bring you guys over here to the sewing machine so you can see how it gets sewn together. My technique, I learned this from Valerie Nesbitt, who is a British instructor. But the easiest way to me for this block, you could do one of 2 ways. You can do each row separately and then sew the rows together. But I like to do a slightly different method. I like to put my blocks together and go right down the block. I do it in columns instead of in rows. I'm using a 1/4-inch seam allowance, and I'm sewing today on a Juki 2010 TLQ. And the way you put these together is you pick up your pieces, you put them right sides facing, and you put a 1/4 inch seam in. Now, do not break thread between your pieces. Just make sure everything matches and put your 1/4 inch seam in. The goal of this is to have great points when we get done. And this way you don't have to sit and pin and fiddle with the points. You just put them together. Now that I've finished all 3 pieces, now I'm going to break thread, but I'm not going to take these apart. Thread, but I'm not going to take these apart. I am going to now finger press my seams. And for me, I'm going to finger press towards the darker fabric. So that top row is going to get finger pressed towards the pink. Second row is going to get finger pressed towards the pink, but they're going 2 different directions. And the third row is getting finger pressed towards the pink, which is going a different direction. Now I'm going to take my first row, the last piece, and I'm going to lay this down, and I'm going to sew it on. Still haven't broken thread. This has 2 advantages. It lets you not break thread, which saves you thread. I mean, it may only be a little bit, but every little bit counts. And then it keeps everything in order. So you're not going to mix up where things belong because you laid it out to start with and made sure it matched what your block said. Going to break thread again, and we're going to go back up here, and we are once again going to finger press towards the colored fabric, towards the pink, because to me it's the darker fabric. Yeah, did that right. I had to make sure. And then here is towards the pink. Now, the advantage of finger pressing towards the pink fabric on each block is that it brings your seams up so they can nest together. And then when you line this up, you just keep those 2 seams together and you put your 1/4 inch seam in. And you get past that 1/4 inch seam, then you want to match your next one. It is more important that your center seams nest than that your outside edges match. And I keep my finger on that nested seam until I finish. And then I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to nest my 2 seams and then match up my outside edge and put my 1/4 inch seam in here. Match my edges, match my seams, then put my 1/4 inch seam in. And let's go back over to the cutting board. Okay, so now we're back over at the cutting board and I've got everything sewed. I'm making sure that all my edges are down and I'm going to finger press my block open on both sides. And you can see, even without going to the iron yet, all of my corners match well. It looks just like my card. And that block is done with no issues. So if you follow the instructions, it should be perfectly fine. And then I am going to put it down here. I had this backwards, but 24 down to 13.5 is 10.5. 24 down to, and once it's ironed out, it will be 10.5 each way. So I have a nice 10.5 inch finished block. So it finished exactly as it's supposed to. It's the perfect pattern. It's exactly the same as the card. And I followed the directions on there. So we have a nice block. So that's the first block in our Quilt Builder card deck box, is the 9-patch variation. Here's the card, and here's the block. I think it came out really well. We'll get it ironed up and put it on the design wall. And we're going to start working our way through this box. Each week, I will show you the basics of cutting it. I won't give you the measurements because that's not my, it's not my pattern. It's not my box. But I will show you how to cut, and each one has 5 variations. And I will show you how to put it together. Some of these blocks, it looks like they want you to do Y seams and various things that are a little tougher for a beginner quilter. They want you to do some things that are a little tougher for a beginner quilter. So I'm going to try to put my spin on it to show you easier ways to do things. Like I said, this is a really simple block, but we've started. Let's see how it proceeds. Y'all have a great day, and thank you for watching.